mastermind, and then I ended up opening my own business in 2006. I've had the pleasure of going to Atlanta and, working on production sets with other people, working behind the scenes. So I just, I'm really grateful
right.
that I'm multi-talented. I'm grateful for that because, I'm sitting here looking at the Black Men too, and I'm thinking, oh, I can help do their makeup and we can perform. But I didn't even mention it. I'm like, no. You're going to focus. This is your time. So it's awesome when you can, be gifted to do certain things. And my thing is I love really hard. So I don't want to say I love hard because people, try to take advantage of that. But I do. But they can't take advantage of it because you know what? People can only do what you allow them to do to you.
Right.
So just remember that. Some people are victims of violent crimes that they didn't allow, and things of that nature. But personally in your life, when you're in relationships and involved with people, I've learned people do what you allow them to do. You do have control over that. So I've taken my control back.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Nothing wrong with that at all. I definitely want you to stay on the line. I do want to bring Bradley in, and we still might hear from Santa Claus as well. But if you could definitely bring Bradley in, because I definitely want to bring Bradley into the conversation and definitely want to see who else might call in as well.
Santa Claus
all right.
Yay.
Ain't that something? Mr. Simmons, welcome to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark, sir. You're now on the line.
How you doing, man? How's it going?
I'm all right. I can't complain.
Doing good, Bradley. This is Mark on the line. Like I said, calling from H-Town. I know you might be here joining me on Thursday when we have Kwanzaa here if you're in town and everything. But, Dean is from the New Jersey area. That's where he's based at right now. His wife is from the Harlem area, and he's definitely got some folks that are tied into New York. You are a native of New York City. You came down here and got involved in our music scene and were involved with Baba Chuck Davis for a number of years as I believe you were one of his primary master music directors and things of that nature for a number of years. I actually met you a number of years back when Eddie Harris, another person with North Carolina and New York ties, had a studio that was kind of an artistic studio way back before Durham was the cool spot that it is now, the downtown Durham area, and there was not much going on, and we were above Gurley's drugstore, and like my friend Ray Pascal says, we could roll people down the street and not hit anybody. That's how dead it was in that time. The things were going on and everything. So just tell us a little bit about your story and everything, because like I said, you've been involved. As I was just finding out, because I did do a little bit of I've known you for a number of years, but I did some follow-up research. I did not realize that you had started getting involved in the African drums when you were 9 years old, and you're even a little bit older than me, and I'm late 50, so you've been doing this for a number of years. So what made a 9-year-old decide they wanted to learn about African drums?
I was 9 years old. I've been playing for 59 years now. And there was my best friend, Melvin Jefferson, was taking dance lessons at a studio in Queens, the Gloria Jackson School of Dance. At that time, it was called Leroy's in Gloria Jackson. And so he invited me to go to the concert to see the show. And then that following year, I joined the school as a tap dancer first. So I started tap dancing before I started drumming a year before. And then the year that we did do the concert together, when we got off stage, a group of drummers, young drummers, was coming on stage to perform, and we stood in the wings of the theater to watch them perform. And ever since we saw them, from that point on, we went home and told our parents we wanted to study drums. So that's how I got into drumming by way of tap dancing.
Oh yeah, and I mean I can see that tap dancing is another form of percussion, so I can definitely see where that would be kind of like related and things of that nature. But as I was reading some of this stuff, I've known you for a number of years, and there were things that were on the autobiography, and it was actually from another friend of yours, podcast and everything, that I did not realize. I did not realize that you had performed with Eartha Kitt and Melba Moore. So tell us a little bit about that.
That was in 1978. The show was Timbuktu. and that was on Broadway in New York. That was right after I did Guys and Dolls. I did Guys and Dolls first in '76, and then 2 years later I got into Timbuktu, and that was kind of like a fluke because it was 2 o'clock in the morning when I got the phone call by a good friend of mine named Oba Babatunde, and he was telling me, he said, wake up. You need to get down to the theater tonight. I said, tonight? What's going on? And he said, you need to get down there tonight. You cannot miss this. So I went down there, and what happened was the percussionist that was doing the gig, he was always out, and he didn't have an understudy. So I went down there to be his understudy, and from that point on, I ended up taking over the gig after the show closed on Broadway. And I was his sub, and I was also Chief Bay's sub at the time. So that's how I got into Timbuktu. So it was Eartha Kitt, Melba Moore, Gilbert Price, Ira Hawkins at the time. And then when we went on tour, Greg Baker, Vanessa Shore, Bruce Hubbard, and George Bell took over the role. And that's how we ended the show 3 years later.
And what are some of the things that you've been amazed about when you've been learning? Because like I said, you've been learning about African drums and just the whole Afro-Cuban African culture, like you said, for a number of years, over almost close to 60 years. But what are some of the things that have really surprised you about what you have learned about this very powerful instrument and this very powerful part of our culture? Because I think oftentimes we don't know enough about our own culture, and particularly the percussion part of it.
Well, what surprised me a lot was how long I stayed in it. Some people, I had a lot of students that we both came up together, but they gave it up. I stayed in it. I said, this is it for me. I'm going to take this as far as I can go with it. And just learning different cultures of, where percussion instruments are played, like in Cuba, Brazil, Haiti, different parts of Africa, and the Caribbean. So that's kind of like what I was doing was pretty much learning the whole time, and I'm still learning till this day, because you always learn something new all the time. You never stop learning.
Yeah, and it seems like you're like we were talking about with Nikki earlier. It seems like you've been one of those people that has definitely been dedicated to the art form, and is definitely not going to let anything stop you from pursuing your dreams. Like Nikki said, she went through some hard times, and if she's still on the line, she can share some of that and everything. Yes. But it sounds like you've definitely also not let anything stop you, and you've had some amazing abilities to just do some great works. I mean, as I'm looking, I did not realize, among the other things that I realized, I knew you had played, but I think somebody had told me about the Norman Connors, but I did not realize that you had played with the Fatback Band.
Yeah, Bill Curtis, yeah. I was with the Fatback Band for a while. I was with Miles J. I worked with Gregory Hines and Maurice Hines for a while. And I just worked with a lot of different artists, during my career as a musician. But I went to school for theater. I was a theater major. So what I was doing at Brooklyn College, I was studying acting and directing. So that's why I got into doing a lot of directing of a lot of the shows that we did at the Hayti, and then put my own group together, the Elements of Percussion.
Oh, yeah, and the Elements of Percussion. Is the Elements of Percussion still in business? And you did your show at the National Black Arts Festival in Atlanta, and, of course, you did it here. But are y'all still considered to be intact, and are you looking at doing any more shows in the near future? And do you have any need for a vocalist? Because Nikki, I'm sure, would take the job.
Well, yeah, we always got room for anybody. But yeah, we come together when stuff comes up. We don't play as much as we used to, because everybody disbanded. Ebo lives down in Kansas City, Missouri now. So, but when something comes up, I just get on the phone and call whoever I can get. And but we me and Ebo talked about trying to put it back, back in motion again, and do what we were doing back in '97 and '98.
Yeah, like I said, that was 20 years ago, so it's probably time for it to come back into action and things. I know that a lot of folks are always enthusiastically warm welcome into the drums when they hear him. I know we'll hear him during the Kwanzaa performance and everything. We've had the pleasure of talking to a few people, Pierce being one of them, that knew Baba Chuck Davis. You actually worked with him for a number of years. Tell us about how you got involved with Baba Chuck Davis and your involvement with the African American Dance Ensemble. Because like I said, you were the former music director of his company, and of course he was a legend that we've talked about a number of times on the show.
Yeah. Right. I worked with Chuck in New York first when he had his company, the Chuck Davis Dance Company. And I started working with him right after I came off the tour with Timbuktu. And then played with them for years up there. And then I just got tired in New York at the time, and I said, Chuck, you still need a music director, because he was looking for a music director, for his company down here. He said, yeah. I said, well, okay, I'm on my way. And so when I came down, that's when I took over the job as the music director. I did that for 3 years when I came down here, and then I started, I left, but me and Chuck stayed, we stayed friends all the way to the end. And that's when I left, and I went over to Duke and started teaching at Duke. So that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, and you've been doing a great job of teaching over at Duke. Are you oftentimes surprised at how well the Duke students take to the music? Because I know we've had John Brown on the show, and John has talked about teaching at Duke, and of course he's been there with their jazz department for a number of years. And we do oftentimes when we think of the music around this community, Duke is one of the people that folks think of in terms of education. Of course, they think of Central, but I don't know that Duke gets as much respect as it should get musically wise. So I was wondering what you think of the respect that Duke gets in terms of its music students that it provides and just its music legacy.
Well, the students that I get, the students that I get, even the students that John gets, they're pretty much attentive, and they enjoy what they're doing. They have fun. I always tell my students in the class, I said, look, this is your fun class. This takes you away from all the nightmares you go through with all your other classes. I said, this is where you release yourself, you have fun. We do a concert, once a year, and and just enjoy what you're doing. And they learn a lot because I bring in guest artists, so they get a chance to perform with the different guest artists that I bring in. So I try to bring in people within the area, between here in New York, maybe as far as California. I went as far as Cuba this year, and I brought in an artist, Melina Valdez. We brought her in from Havana, Cuba. But other than that, and then I brought another guy in last year from Conakry, Guinea, but he lives in South Carolina, so it was easy to get him over here.
Wow. And so when you bring these artists in, what has their reaction been to the North Carolina and particularly the Durham music scene? Because like I said, you're bringing them in from all over. So are they already aware of our active music scene? Because we have a very active music scene here that covers all kinds of genres, everything from R&B and hip-hop to country to gospel to African world music and everything. So are they already aware of the kind of scene that we have here, or are they surprised when they get here to this area?
Well, both. Some of them are aware of it, and a lot of them are pretty much surprised to actually see what we do here. Because, they never think that, okay, you down in the South, ain't a whole lot going on down here. And I tell them, I said, look, there's more going on down here than what you think. You see, and then when they see it and I take them around, they say, oh, wow, you got this going on, you got that going on. And so they get here, they have fun, they enjoy themselves, and sometimes they want to come back. And I brought one guest artist back. That was Monty Ellison. I brought him back twice. So working on recycling now and bringing some other guest artists back that I had here before.
Oh, yeah. You're always bringing some amazing artists in town. I'm sure you're already planning some for 2020 that folks will be surprised at and are anxiously waiting to figure out who you'll be bringing into the community and things of that nature. Now, in terms of your own world travels, is there any particular part of the world that you have gone to that you've really been encouraged by what you saw or really inspired by what you saw? Because like you said, you mentioned you've been to Haiti, you've been to Cuba, you've been to various parts of Africa, sometimes with Baba Chuck, and I imagine sometimes on your own. Or just share with our listeners a little bit about some of those trips and some of the things that you learned on those trips.
One of the trips that I always wanted to go to was going to Cuba. I've been dreaming about going to Cuba for years, and when I finally got a chance to go,